Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, the numbers in two parts. We'll see. But we're not getting two parts tonight. We only have one part.
There's
Hello,
only one blonde
everyone.
Venus.
We only have one blonde Venus, though it is our penultimate pre-code episode that we're having here, our PC for pre-code films that we've been covering all year. Hope you've been enjoying these discussions. I know we have, even when they're not really great films. They still have sparked some interesting conversations, and it is the penultimate rated PC for pre-code special where we're looking at 1932 Blonde Venus, starring Marlene Dietrich, which fits with our She's Dietrichiest month, which I think I just heard
It
my
never
wife.
gets better.
No, it doesn't. My wife cringed upstairs, and I'm like, oh, that just makes it better when people are like, oh, come on. I'm like, no, we're sticking with it. I pick a gimmick, I stick with it, baby. And who's sticking with me tonight? Well, two gentlemen who have been with us for most of the year for these pre-code films. First off, we have the man, myth, legend himself, Mr. Joe Randazzo, is with us. Hello, Joe.
Hey, everyone.
And of course, the guy who keeps coming back for more, the right, left hand man, depending on the way the windows fall in our stream, Mr. Ian Simmons. How you doing, Ian?
I'm doing great.
And yes, so Josef von Sternberg directed this 1932 film. And Joe, give us the synopsis, would you?
All right. Well, let me look up the character's name, the husband's name, real quick.
Ned.
It is Ned. Okay, Ned and his friends are traveling through a forest in Germany. They come upon a cab, and the cab driver they want to hire the cab driver to take them back into civilization, but the cab driver they think he's playing hardball, and he's like, I can't take you because I'm currently being told to stay here. And why is he being told to stay there? Because 6 beautiful German women are skinny dipping in the forest. And when these 7 guys find out there's 6 gorgeous skinny dipping women there, like, hey, let's go bother them.
Well, yeah, because, sure, it's the 30s. Go ahead.
So, yeah, Ned tells Helen he would like to see her. She wants them to leave because they are obviously swimming around naked, as you can in pre-code movies. 2 years from now, you can't do that anymore. And he asks her, if we leave, can I see you again? She still says no. So he decides to go to the theater and see her and then talk to her after. Fast forward a couple years. They now have a child. They are living together. She is giving the child a bath. While Ned has to go out and try to, I guess, sell his body to science.
Yeah, because he's
not well. He's been poisoned. He needs medical treatment. Best they can do is give him $50 while he needs $1,500 to go get this treatment. His wife decides I could go back to being a dancer, and an actress on the stage and make some money. And while you go to Europe, the very first night, she's in a very weird production where for some reason she starts out in a gorilla suit. So she immediately catches the eye of Cary Grant, who is this rich, well-to-do playboy who immediately falls for her, and he gives her immediately $300, which is enough to get her husband to Germany for this experimental treatment that he needs. She doesn't tell him where he got the money. She was out with him all night. You can make your imagination can go wild as to what was going on. But it's basically what we think. As he's leaving, Cary Grant swoops her up and basically is like, "Hey, look, come live with me for a little while." And couple months go by. She gets a telegram saying that her husband's coming back on the 30th of the month. And Cary Grant is so besotted with her that he decides, hey, let's just go somewhere for 2 weeks. Let's, send our relationship off,
Yeah.
But the husband comes back 2 weeks early, finds his telegram telling her that he's coming back 2 weeks early, untouched under the door, finds that she hasn't been in the apartment except to collect mail. She comes home. He finds out what's been going on, basically kicks her out, and she goes on the run with the kid. And it basically becomes then, her trying to stay, a couple steps ahead of the police and a couple steps away from the husband. And I guess we'll take it from there. Because I mean, the story has its twists and turns. And I love that she tells the police officer that finds her. She calls him Sherlock Holmes, but he actually, Sidney Toler, that actor, would go on to be another great detective, not Sherlock Holmes. He's Charlie Chan in Dark Alibi, the movie we watched earlier this year. So I thought that was kind of a interesting connection. But yeah, first time viewer on this one for me. It's been on my radar for a while, but actually I finally bought this Marlene Dietrich box set that I wanted because I was going to do this podcast. So I was like, what the hell? I've wanted to see this movie for a while anyway.
Nice.
So
excellent. And what'd you think of it?
I actually really liked it. I liked the moral
ambiguity.
Yeah, the kind of moral ambiguity that comes with this kind of story where no one's really a good guy and no one's really a bad guy either. There's just shades of gray everywhere, which I always find interesting. Because on the one hand, while you could totally understand the husband being like, no, get the hell out, he is kind of rough about it. He's very demeaning in the way he speaks to her, which, again, there are parts where you can maybe understand it. But you do kind of feel for her because she does really love the boy, and that's the reason why she just takes him and runs. So there's a lot going on morally, and moral ambiguity is, I think, the perfect way to put it. Really, really enjoyed this one. Actually, liked it more than the spoilers, which I liked, but I thought had its flaws. But I really loved this one.
What about you, Ian? This first time view for you?
Yeah, I watched it today. In fact, I think, I had a problem last week with Marlene Dietrich because that was the first thing I think I'd really noticed her in. I didn't quite get it. I get it in this one. I mean, it's a little bit earlier. She's a bit younger. I can really see that kind of star quality to her. But I don't think there's any moral ambiguity at all. I had a real hard time with this picture. I think it's really well done. I think she's a great villain, but no, I don't see any shades of gray. She's not. There's nothing good in her. And there's very much good in Ned, but his main problem is he's a complete cuck. My God. I mean, just think about what you're proposing here, Joe. The only thing at the very beginning of the movie, he and his, asshole buddies, and, they're, I don't know how old they're supposed to be, but yeah, they do the whole thing of like, yeah, you're skinny dipping and, we've got your clothes or whatever. We don't want to leave. It's kind of skeevy, but, and I don't think you can call this precedent because it's a later movie, but I immediately recalled the scene in It's a Wonderful Life where Mary and George are walking home and he steps on her robe and she's in the bushes and he's like, oh, well, you don't find yourself in this position every day. At least some people don't. And so it's kind of like playful banter or whatever, and they end up together. So it's not like a clear-cut case of like bullying or harassment, right?
I definitely agree with you on that. I think it was played a little bit more playfully in It's a Wonderful Life, though. And
definitely.
You got Jimmy Stewart can sell anything. So.
Right. Yeah. Right. But here's the thing. Like, you've got Ned, who's this devoted father. He's working in a very dangerous field with the prospect of whatever this patentable formula he is, because he's working in like radiation therapy or something like that. And that's what gives him this terminal illness. But he's doing that so he can set his family up so that they won't have to worry after he's gone. And then in desperation, he goes to try and sell his body to science because he doesn't have a guarantee that big payday is going to come in time for him to actually get it. When he finds out that his body is pretty much worthless, except for this therapy, yes, his wife goes back to work and he doesn't, feel that great about it. But again, that was sort of the time.
Mhm.
And there was a very good point. Like, okay, who is going to raise this kid if, neither of us is really around? So she gets this money for him and he goes away and immediately,
That's where I have the issue. Yeah.
he's not on the boat. I mean, for me, it wouldn't matter if it was a month away. Okay. If they're as devoted and loving of each other, the way they talk to each other in front of their kid and about the relationship, and then she just on a dime, oh, look, it's Cary Grant. And then they're screwing around or whatever. On top of that, they're bringing the kid into it like immediately. Oh, this is your daddy now, essentially. While your husband is away in Europe getting experimental therapy to save his life, which no one even is guaranteed to work. He announces, hey, I'm going to live. I can't wait to come be with my family. And she's all conflicted, like, oh, I just, I want to be with you, but I'm married. It's kind of a drag. It's like the Bridges of Madison County bullshit, right? Leave your husband or don't. But and then she takes the kid and leaves. The husband has every right to, flip out on her, and probably even worse because of what she's done. And then she kidnaps the kid. And then later, after all of this running around, she just gives him up. And you're like, you know what? I'm a bad person. Yes, thank you. A moment of clarity and self-reflection. But then at the very end, she feels the need to come back into her son's life for just a few minutes. With no thought to what that's going to do to him, because the dad has already been trying to help him move on from this situation. And then all of a sudden, mom comes back for 10 minutes and then never to be seen again. But wait, there's more. They end up giving him tucking him into bed and recounting the story of how they met. It's a flashback it's a bookend to the beginning of the film. And then we're just meant to think that, oh, Helen is in love with Ned again, so they're going to be together, and she's probably just never going to tell Nick, the Cary Grant character, that she's done. Like, she is a user, she's a vampire, and she's trash. I love the performance. The story really got under my skin. I think it's a great movie, but it's a great movie about one of the worst villains I've seen ever.
I'm going to just pop my drink right now of Not Your Father's Root Beer as we discuss this. Yeah.
I think the way it starts, I think, is actually well-meaning. She's like, look, I got to do what I got to do to get him money. I think she's even surprised that Cary Grant keeps it going for as long as he does. And I don't think she ever expected that she was actually going to fall for him. I do agree. Yeah. On the surface, hell, even deep down, yeah, there is a scummy part to her character. Absolutely. I think the love that she has for her son, and at the end, I don't think she's going to just leave. I think like you said, I think she does want to continue to be a part of the kid's life. And I don't think when they left at the rail station, I don't think that her giving it up, her giving the kid up, was something that she wanted to do. I think it was, look, you caught me, you found me. You're right. I'm not giving this kid a very good life. He would be better off with you at this point instead of running from the law. But I think that the reason she just goes away is because she figures he's not going to let me see this kid anymore. And I think and I don't think it's just that she just doesn't want to anymore. I think it's just her realization of, yeah, it's not going to happen. I might as well make peace with the fact that I'm not going to see my child again.
Right. But then she comes back at the end, however much time is elapsed. Like, if she's going to make that decision, she needs to make the decision, right? And just give him up.
That's the odd thing, is the time lapse there, because the kid is not much older than when she left, but he already doesn't remember her when he sees the picture.
It's implied. I guess it's supposed to be like an hour, because not an hour, a year. Sorry.
An
It's
hour?
supposed to be.
I forgot
It's
it an
supposed to
hour.
be
That's
almost.
really something.
Well, it's really interesting, this whole story, and this is what you're right. I mean, she is just not a great person. Her where she starts out with good intentions of getting her job at the first club, that was it. It just falls apart from there, and she just becomes this other person that you really are just like, yeah, no. When is the dad going to get the kid back is when you're asking. That's what I was when I was being a parent and all.
Well, I mean,
With
you
this,
he's
but
going to, but I think part of the journey is kind of wanting them to keep somehow getting
right.
away.
I mean,
I don't know.
I enjoyed the story. What surprised me was how she continually gave up just as she was becoming big, she ends up giving it away. And that's part of the underlying theme in this, actually, at least in the first, I would say in the first part of this, is she was becoming a dancer and she wanted to perform when she was in Germany, and she ended up falling in love with Ned, and they ended up going to America and having a kid. And in one of the most awkward edits ever in film, to we go from them making like go to Google eyes or what, and all of a sudden we get this random shot of kid in bathtub. Then we get this shot of like New York skyline or whatever.
Well, no, I think
And
that
then
was a really clever transition because we go from her swimming away in that
right
lagoon
to the
to the
bathtub.
boy
Yeah.
playing in the bathtub, and that's to show, some time has passed. They don't have to go like a cheesy title card. I mean, I really liked the way they did that because they could have just cut from her swimming away to a living room and they're all kind of sitting around like with dad and his pipe and his paper or something. But no, they cut specifically to him in the bathtub, and then that leads to them together in the bathtub, and that's where the first iteration of the story, they catch us up on what happened after she swam away in that lagoon. We
Yeah,
don't
and you don't
see
really
it,
need
we
to
hear it.
know too much about what happened.
No,
I mean,
no.
they also didn't need to cut to the New York skylines because they had the sidewalks of New York playing as the transition music.
That was just, it just threw me off. I'm like, they literally do this dissolve to, from her swimming away to kid in the bathtub, like, oh, okay, and we're gonna go from there, and then we're gonna see her. It's obvious that that's her kid, but then we cut away to like this stock footage of a ship coming into New York or whatever, and then we go back to them, and I was just like, it just threw me off for a minute. That's all.
Well,
I mean,
but here's the thing. It's not obvious that it's her kid if you're watching it. If you put yourself in 1932,
that's
we
true.
don't know
Okay.
anything about her. That could have
Yeah.
been a younger brother. She could have been a nanny,
Yeah,
going back
that's
to,
true.
we don't know anything about her. So that helps to show not only the passage of time, but also the transition of location because they're in Germany and then they're in New York. So if
Right.
we just shown them in the apartment, it could have been like, oh, so this is her later in an apartment with her younger brother. They're probably still in Germany somewhere,
Sure.
whatever. Yeah, it's different and it is kind of unsettling, but I think that actually sets us up for the incongruity of what this character is throughout this movie. Because I agree, she is very good with her son in those moments. She does have that maternal instinct, except when she randomly throws it away when she's confronted with authority. It's like she panics and like, I gotta just give him up. But I think that's what makes it so hard to stomach, is because you get the feeling you're just like, why? When did this happen? I don't quite understand who she is as a character, as a woman, as a mother, because sometimes the screenplay steps in and says, oh, wait, we're making a chase movie. So they have to pack up and then she's got to give him up so we can have this weird happy ending. Yeah, she reminds me of Malcolm McDowell's character in A Clockwork Orange. Completely amoral, utterly charismatic, and very theatrical. I would not recommend any of these people as friends, but you can't not watch them and be intrigued, even though they're completely scummy.
Well, she's self-destructive, and that's part of the story, is that she actually starts to get it good. I mean, they literally put her name up on the marquee. They like her talent. She's got that. And then suddenly, just because she meets Cary Grant.
Well, that's the thing. She's become a huge star 3 times in this movie, and all 3 times she gives it up for a man. Once for Ned and twice for Cary Grant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which was I will say was a bit of a surprise seeing Cary Grant's character, because you almost forget about him at a point in this film, because it's like he gave her the money. We won't say why he gave her the money, but it's implied of why
Yeah.
he gave her the 1,500, which, by the way, equals 34,000 in today's 2024. There you go. The spoiler room money conversion section of our podcast that we always do with these.
I'd sleep with Cary Grant for $34,000.
Or maybe even 300. Mark, Mark, I don't know if you can do this conversion, but that was a significant number to me, that $300. But then later, Helen goes to stay at this ladies only boarding house.
Yeah,
which is 15 cents a night. What does that translate to?
I'm not sure.
Well, let's find out.
$5.
1932 is what today in 2024.
Oh, you're already on it?
I'm already on it. That was $3.15.
Wow. Yeah.
That room was and that looked like something you would get for $3.
Yeah, you have no privacy. There's 15 other people in the room with you. So yeah.
I gotta say, it was a jaw-dropping moment when eventually Ned catches up with Helen and pays her back the $1,500 that she, that was basically used to save his life, because it's like, look, here, you can have it. She takes the money, which is in an envelope. She goes to this ladies only boarding house and talks to another lady who's planning to kill herself the next day. And she's like, whatever, here. Because why you want to kill yourself? It's like, I don't have any money. It's like, here's $1,500.
Yeah.
And then she stumbles on over to like a poker game, and she's like, hell with all you. And then she goes and finds her way back to the top. It's a very strange movie, is what I'm getting at.
What's very interesting, and actually, while this is a character you can't really get behind, I was happy with the way it was actually written, because we're used to a story like this, to where, okay, she's been lucky enough to dodge the cops and still be successful and be with her kid, and finally that catches up to her, and she gets her, you get the reckoning day, and then we find her drunk in this woman's shelter for 15 cents, for $3 or whatever. She meets someone who's going to kill herself, and you almost think that's where we're going with Helen, with her character, is that she's hit rock bottom for her, and she gives this woman the 1,500 to save her life, but it almost is implied, and I would say more modern film might actually have her go die or kill herself or something, Helen, because of where she's at. It seems like where she's at mentally and in her life now, where she has nothing, she's going to go and die, or she ends up passing out in the streets and ends up dying in the streets, in the gutter or whatnot. I'm just saying a little more modern, like say 70s or 80s take might actually put her there. But no, you're right. She sits there and she's like, no, fuck you all. I'm going to be big again. And sure as shit, she becomes the talk of France again, to where she's entertaining folks. She's filling the club for 3 months straight. But as tradition with this character that we learn over the hour and a half or so we're with her, she meets Cary Grant. Grant bats his eyes at her, and she's like, I'm going to give it all up. I'm going to marry him now. It's like, I'm like, what are you? I'm like, this is a woman who, if she didn't feel the need to give things up all the time for a man, she could be in a strong place, but she just continually seems to do this. And then at the end, like you said, with Ned, they recount the first time they live, and then we fade to black, and we see Cary Grant's character, Nick, leave the apartment at one point when they're trying to both take care of the kids, figuring, oh, I know where this is going. And it is. We end with it implied that Ned's gonna take her back after all of this.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the reason that I have the moral that I say there's moral ambiguity here is because when she does come clean about what happens, and I'm not an expert on 1930s law, so I don't know how this would have panned out. But his instinct is you're never going to see your child again, which is why she kidnaps him. So that's the part where I really kind of see her side in this and why she would want to run away. Because, okay, was she unfaithful? Yes. Is it scummy to do that to another human being? Absolutely. Would she deserve the indignity of being told she can never see her child again? I don't think so.
Well, but I mean, if you reverse the genders on this, it's not much different than what a lot of people
I would say the same thing
in courts today, where people have gotten, custody revoked for, I would say far less egregious problems in the family. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that given what we know of this family, and I think part of the heartbreak is because they genuinely do seem to love each other and be committed to each other until this out of the blue betrayal happens. It's like, okay, what is going on with Helen here? I feel like there's some information missing because she does come across as a sociopath. And as far as giving up her career for a man, she does that only twice, really. The first time, she doesn't give anything up for a man. She decides to settle down to be a mom.
That's
and there's
true.
a big difference.
That's true. We don't know that she's a star there. You're right.
And she reluctantly, she's like, look, if we need the money, I can go back to show business. She seems perfectly happy doing the stitching and, raising the kid and all that stuff. It's not, he didn't put up to her like, hey, maybe if you got back on stage, you could make a few bucks for me.
No, I get you. I guess it's just one of those things where she continuously seems to just get in a good spot, but then self-destructs herself.
But at the same time, the infidelity. I mean, granted, she's hooking up with a millionaire. That's what actually saves her husband's life, which I think is what's causing the issue with him. More than anything is the fact that you're fucking around is what saved my life. He at one point he even tells her, "I rather you just let me die."
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
and that's why he pays her back the $1,500 because he doesn't want to be indebted to her at all. He's like, "I thank you for saving my life, but
I certainly don't like how you did it."
And we could have possibly gone about this differently with my patent almost being done.
Well, on top of that, I think it would have helped if she kind of understood that, because she's just kind of a cold person, in a lot of ways throughout the movie. She has her pockets of warmth, usually when it comes to her son. But when she decides to go off with Cary Grant to, do whatever she does to get this money to make her husband get well, there's no like, I really don't want to be doing this. She's kind of like, oh, I'm just going to dance around in my furs and everything's kind of fine. She's kind of like okay with whatever happens. And that just didn't strike me as honest.
Had it been a different story where like, okay, we ended it and I went back to my husband and he found out later on, I think there's also, and like you said, like she was a little bit more resistant towards it instead of just flying head on into it. I think I think everyone would have a little bit more sympathy for her. But
she seems to roll with the darker side of the entertainment business. She seems to roll with it a hell of a lot easier than you may expect for her character, given her situation when we first meet her. She seems to really, kind of be far more open to things easier than you would be comfortable with, considering how we see her in the beginning being the wife and the mom and everything. And, and then she meets up with the kind of skeezy manager and you're like, wait, where's this going? And you see suddenly her character change. And this is where I think Marlene Dietrich does well with this character, in that it's not a huge change, but there is a change to her between the woman with her son, the woman who is in front of the entertainers, and then the woman who's on the run trying to protect her own skin of sorts. And you can see it. It's not like drastic, like, oh, she's Joker or Harley Quinn type of transition, but you can see differences in the way she talks or her demeanor or her stance or the look on her face. I think she does really well as we watch her jump between these different personas of hers, and you especially see it when she goes to see the manager. She kind of changes when she realizes, oh, I see what I have to do to get this.
And that comes about through Taxi, the other performer with her, who's like, oh yeah, he gave me this bracelet, which is worth $1,500. Like, $1,500, you say? But again, but it's also, how much does my husband need to get well? $1,500. So I think that goes off in her head, like, look, all right, maybe if I fuck this guy and I get $1,500, I can give it to my husband and he can go get well. I think it just kind of spirals out of control.
Mm-hmm.
Though she does enjoy it.
Well, and that's the thing, is I think we're missing that spiraling out of control element, because she just seems to. I think if there'd been more of a setup where it's like, okay, he needs X amount of money, but then to continue the treatments, he needs her to keep sending him like a steady flow of cash. So she has to be like perpetual arm candy to Cary Grant. After a while, they're just hanging out and fooling around, and the husband's kind of an afterthought until he decides to come back. The other thing, like, I liked Taxi as a character, but she was just pretty much a device to establish a new character. I'm like, because she disappears like less than halfway through the movie.
Is that her at the end, in the middle, when the husband comes back that tells her, oh, he's with
right?
Yeah, that is her.
Again,
that was her.
Yeah. But she pops up for a minute just so she can say, "Oh, you mean that Nick guy?" And you could have done that with any background character. And
we haven't gone really into our Nick character, the guy who really threw a monkey wrench into this whole thing, Mr. Cary Grant, Mr. Suave guy, Mr. Nick Townsend, who apparently is a corrupt politician and possibly into some organized malfeasance. Sorry, that's been my word today. I've been using it everywhere. But that's my word of the day. It's a big word. I only get one a month. Allow me to use this word. But he's the one that, this is a guy who isn't exactly on the up and up. I mean, this is a guy who's not necessarily, it's kind of implied organized crime, but they never go into it. But he is some kind of corrupt guy of how he's made his money over the year, because he's got some clout. He's got a gangster bodyguard of sorts.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like, this is not the Cary Grant of His Girl Friday. I mean, he is.
Oh no.
But the other thing,
Walter Burns is kind of skeevy in his own ways too.
Yeah, sure. But what I'm saying is, like, this guy, I like that he's another villain of this piece, but he's sort of less committal because he's got nothing but a world of options. When he gives her that line, like, yeah, I'm going to go to Europe because I can't be in a city that you're in if we're not together. And he does, and then he pops up back at the end. Was like, "Oh, yeah, I remember you. I was kind of crazy about you for a while." But he can just like emotionally detach and flit off to wherever else he wants to go and be fabulously wealthy and corrupt. And it's kind of a neat piece. He's not. And then when you were talking about, Joe, earlier, about how this story could have gone, as far as like Ned and what he knew about how Helen got the money to help him. I think in a more modern and a lesser movie, we would have had this situation where Nick finds out what Helen is doing with the money he's paying her and uses that as leverage to break up Ned and Helen so that he can have her.
Yeah. I mean, it would have also been, like you said, I think a lesser movie.
Right. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, Nick isn't even that committal. Like at the end, he's like, "Yeah, I'll take you by your old husband's apartment so you can see your kid, and yeah, I'll pay $10,000 so you can talk to him for 10 minutes. I don't really care. Can we just go to dinner now?" Like,
I think it comes with being wealthy and looking like Cary Grant. When you have those two things, then yeah, you have every woman in the world that's going to be like, oh yeah, absolutely, I'm down for this. Yeah. I think 8 years later, he's considered the sexiest man in the world.
Yeah, something like that,
yeah.
To which let's not diminish this, yes, folks, because after all this, they catch up to her. The law catches up to her. She turns herself in. They choose not to arrest her because she gives up the kid. And so she gets her $1,500. She hits it big in France, meets back up with Townsend. They head back to New York. Yeah, there's this whole thing where she wants to see her kid, and the dad is like, yeah, no. And Grant's like trying to pay him off because he's just got all the money in the world. And so he's like, fine, 10 grand for like 5 minutes. 10 grand in 1932 in today's world. Now that's big even in today's world, but you're looking at $230,000.
Well, and that's what I liked about that scene, because he initially says, how about $1,000 for 10 minutes? Mm-hmm. And, Ned turns him down, and you think, wow, this guy's really standing on principle, until he's like, well, I mean, look, you've got all the money in the world. Why not make it, $1,000 a minute? And it's not so much that he sells out. It's that he realizes that this is probably going to be the last that, the kid sees of Helen. So whatever happens in the next 10 minutes, that's going to be it. But he could also set his family up for life with that kind of money.
But I think he doesn't take, I mean, unless I missed something, I think he doesn't take the money anyway.
Do we establish that he doesn't take it?
No, he doesn't take it at the end.
Yeah, because I think he says that he doesn't need the money, just let her in.
Yeah. Yeah, he drops.
I would have to go back and rewatch it, but I think
he drops the line at the end. He's like, actually, you could keep your money. She can get her time.
Okay.
Because he was weighing how much this guy was going to, just who she was with. I think he was gauging who she was with now, because he is kind of, at this point, Ned's like, fuck her, forget her, I don't care if I ever see her again or if my kid sees her again, but she's been with this guy, and this is the guy that started kind of this whole mess, sort of. He was one of the players in it. And so I think he wanted to see just what type of guy he was by upping up the price. And when he doesn't blink at, okay, 10 grand, he's like, you know what? Keep your fucking money. He's like, wow. He's like, yeah, she could stay with you. You cold-hearted, because you're right. He is indifferent through this whole thing. He's smitten with her, but he could take it or leave it, because in a way, he reminded me a little bit of the Little Giant in a way, in that he's got so much money that the options are just whatever. He could just do whatever. And if it works out or doesn't, I'll just move on, because I guarantee you I've got this money and I can find someone else. It's not too much of a headache. This is fun. But, that's why he leaves at the end, because when he sees Ned go in there with Helen to tuck the kid in, he kind of sees the writing on the wall, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm exiting stage left. He figuring he's probably not going to see her again. Like, she's back to where, she's going to probably stay necessarily.
And that's the problem that bugged me with this happy ending, is she's going to probably stay.
Yeah.
There's no indication from the previous 90 minutes that she's going to stay.
I disagree, because she does tell Cary Grant that she does still love him when he's coming back. And I don't think it's, I think she's that kind of person, and we probably all know somebody who's like this, that kind of falls in love hard. And I think that's what it is here. I think she does love Ned, and I think she loves him the entire way through. I think she still loves him at the end.
That may be true. I think she loves herself more. Everything she does throughout the course of this movie nothing she does in the course of this movie shows that she has the kind of love for someone else that transcends her love for herself, except maybe a little bit for her son, but certainly not for Ned. I don't believe that a week later Cary Grant can't come back in and say, look, I'm crazy about you. Look how your husband treated you. Why don't you come back with me? And she's like, what about my kid? Well, you know what? I can buy a couple of judges. We can get him too.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I think
definitely could. Yeah, that
this
character definitely
movie
could.
this movie wants us to believe in the happy ending, but I'm just looking at her behavior throughout the rest of the picture and being like, if I were Ned, I would be sleeping with one eye open because she's going to leave.
I think the only reason she leaves with the kid in the first place is because he makes it clear, I'm not going to let you see him again. I don't think it's ever, the idea that that I no longer love this man. I think she does love them both. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to gauge.
And this is what I really liked about this film is because you're like, she is for a 1932 film. This is a rather layered, complicated character. We're trying to understand.
We're sitting here talking about it 90 years later. Like, does she love them both? Yeah, Ian says no. I say she does.
Well, no, I think she does love them both, but there's different degrees of love, right?
And she's at number one. And maybe her son is at number two, and then wherever the other two fall.
It's her son, and then the other two guys I think are almost tied a little bit,
which is really fucked up because one of them is the father of her child.
Right. But Ned offers her possibly something that she may have dreamed about when she was younger, and it's the opportunity there. So you've got that leading back to her possibly loving herself. This is where I wish we kind of had one of our female crew members here to help us kind of pick this apart a little bit more. But it's that's what I liked about this film is at the end I wasn't sure how I felt about her, and I didn't mind that with this film because I'm left going, yeah, I'm like sitting here going, is this going to last after the credits roll or whatnot? Is she going to go back? Is he going to forgive her? Is that going to be awkward dinners for the next 15 years while the kid, grows up to where they're going to be together for the kid, but not necessarily together as a married couple. But she's, if she goes back to Townsend, then she may not see her kid at all, but they may not exactly be a close couple anymore. There's a lot of things that.
I mean, at this point, they're also living in New York City, so she does go back to Townsend, and he's so well off that they like Ian said, I'll buy a few judges, and we will be able we'll be able to see. I don't know if, and this again, it's nearly 100 years ago. Did the idea of split custody even exist back then? I don't know.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
So I don't know how this would have ended if it went into a court of law. Maybe it's you're married to this rich fuck, so yeah, you can have him.
Well, it would be welfare of the child, and in all reality, the welfare of the child with the mom being with someone who is well off, you could see the courts back then possibly siding with,
maybe before she went on a multi-state kidnapping.
Well, that's the other end of the coin.
There's that. No,
that's the other side of that coin.
There is the other side of the coin. Yeah, exactly. So,
but also, would his wealth also make that go away? Because we've
very
seen
possibly
that happen.
We need Blonde Venus 2.
We need
an appendix to this.
God, even the kid would be dead now.
An epilogue.
Would be the kid would be nearing 100 at this point, so even that can't really happen.
Yeah.
Like you get this 100-year-old man who.
So allow me to get up on my soapbox again. I feel like I say this every week. It's my public service announcement every week. Anyone out there who's watching this or knows someone who complains that there's nothing interesting happening in old movies, or women didn't have complex characters until the year 1999. Go back and watch movies like Blonde Venus, because honestly, for as much as I didn't care for the Helen character, I can't remember being this invested in a character arc, no matter the gender, in quite some time, because I'm like, wow, this really is taking some twists and turns. And while I don't always agree on how like smoothly they got there for some of the reasons we talked about here tonight. I definitely appreciated being challenged in that way because yeah, she's taking her, she's dodging the law, but then she's also really like crazy talented. And some of these numbers that she puts on in these clubs, just like the lyrics are really funny. She is sexy and kind of dangerous in that way. Plus, gave me a great pun. The first number we see in that club where she meets Cary Grant and she's in the giant gorilla costume, she leads through a dancing chorus through the club. You might call it a conga line.
Oh, wow.
And I'm off my soapbox.
But no, and that's why I like this film too. I found myself really intrigued by this because it's a challenging film when you're watching this, because you're through this whole thing, you flip-flop of how you're feeling for Helen exactly, because you also get these moments where she's with her kid and you can tell she really loves her son. You can really feel that, but then she makes some decisions like, are you thinking what this is doing to the son that you really, really love? Because
what happened to the puppy?
Huh? Oh, the puppy.
Yeah,
that was the well, that was the other weird thing is like when little Johnny first meets Nick, he's like, "Here, kid, have a puppy." I'm like,
yeah,
like
buying them instantly.
Well, not only that, but like Helen is not, they're not of means. They're struggling to find money to cure her husband's, radiation poisoning. They're really going to take on a dog and have to feed it and take that's an expense. That's not a gift.
Well, I would think at that point he'd be like, "Look, I'll help you. I'll give you money to take care of the puppy." Just
oh sure, yeah.
But he leaves for Europe and they're on the lam. What is that puppy rotting in some apartment?
Yeah, that's true. What happened to the puppy?
No, that was their meal for the first couple of months.
Oh, there we go. Thanks. I was waiting for us to go there. Interesting enough, and I think this is what helps make this a wonderful penultimate pre-code film, is that even before the Hays Code, there was an organization called the MPPDA, which was the Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America, which formed in 1922, which was a group that was supposed to kind of oversee scripts and such similar to the Hays Code. They didn't enforce things as hard as the Hays Code, and they were a little looser, but this story, which is uncredited, actually written by Marlene Dietrich.
Wow.
She actually wrote the original story for this, which was called I've got it. I think I pulled it up here. Pardon me for just a moment. Mother Love. It was originally written by Marlene Dietrich herself, but the script ended up falling under microscope of the MPPDA, who cut it out and watered it down, and her and the director were suspended for a while they went over the script and cut it down. So by the time they actually filmed this thing, they weren't really into it as much, because apparently, they reviewed scripts using the 1930 Motion Picture Production Code, which banned forced prostitution, allowed characters to engage in voluntary solicitation, provided that the subject was handled with care. And so apparently they cut out scenes with Helen where she's talking with Detective Wilson about references to direct solicitation. Those were removed from the film, and interaction between Helen and the private detective becomes ambiguous, but other plot aspects like adultery remained inconsistent with the production code, which went unenforced until 1934. So they were trying to do some kind of enforcement, and apparently they cut up the script a bit before they actually filmed this thing, which made it unissuable. They couldn't do a reissue then in 1934 because of the Hays Code. So they went over it once and cut some things out, and so they filmed it. But then in 1934, when the Hays Code was in there, they Paramount couldn't release it because there was a even more stricter enforcement.
Wow.
And I'm wondering if the stuff we were talking about where it would have been more ambiguous or would have made her more palatable. I wonder if that's the stuff they cut out.
Possibly.
Because we were talking about like, yeah, maybe she resisted a little bit, and maybe that seems to fall under what you're.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense with the way it's portrayed, and even could explain the happy ending. It's hard to say how this actually
That might be,
would play out. Maybe they put it in the happy ending on purpose when they were cutting it up or reviewing it.
All will be revealed when they remake Blonde Venus with Sydney Sweeney, Glenn Powell, and Ryan Gosling as Ned. Yeah, I can see that. I got to pull over for a second and talk about our Detective Wilson. He's looking for a woman who's on the run, and she's got a small child. He probably has a description of her, maybe even knows that she's got a German accent. He is tailing her, and he runs into her, and they have this whole like weird date over beers. They go back to her place, and it's not until he sees the little boy in the room that he's like, wait a second, you're the person I've been looking for this whole time?
And even then, he doesn't figure it out. She tells him.
She tells him because he's like,
and I love the line where he's like, he can't believe that she figured out he's a cop, and she says, you've got your badge on your face, not under your coat.
Yeah, I love that line.
It's so sharp.
Oh, it's definitely sharp.
That's the great Sidney Toller who would go on to be Charlie Chan. So he was a much better detective later on.
He was a much better detective later on, absolutely.
This is his bad origin story.
He's so embarrassed by this that he has to.
He's so embarrassed he goes to the Orient and he decides to study there as a detective. But he studies too hard and he decides to actually, never mind.
Wow.
Sorry, I couldn't resist. What's interesting is there's one scene in here as well, and that I kind of dug quite a bit was there was the one scene, it was earlier on while she was on the run, to where a lady who she was working for had the paper with her picture in it saying, oh, hey, with the kid. Yeah. And the lady says, here, this is you. Don't go out on stage. Take the back way. Like protecting her. I was like, okay, that was a pretty cool little, I mean, it's a little, like just a little bit, but I love that because it showed how different people handled knowing who she was.
Yeah.
Even back then, even though it took some time, obviously, because of the paper, it didn't have internet or anything like that to get the word out about her.
But let's take this back a bit, Mark, because that newspaper probably carried the story that we saw throughout the entire film when she decided to kidnap little Johnny. Mother wanted for kidnapping son and taking across multiple states. Oh, here, let me help you.
Yeah, but she also
let me help you escape.
She also says, "I'm also a mother." So I'm wondering if that made her think, yeah, this woman might have a good reason to escape because she doesn't know the whole backstory.
Yeah. Right, and by not knowing the whole backstory, she doesn't know this woman is also not a monster.
Well, that's
Well, you'd presume she'd known her at least a couple weeks at that point. So I don't know. Maybe she knows. Okay, she's not going to hurt the kid.
Yeah.
But I don't know why you're running away with him. But I from what I know of your character, I don't think you're the kind of person that'll hurt the kid. Maybe that's the moral judgment call she makes.
Yeah, and I think it's a weak one because what do we know about serial killers? Very charismatic, very can elude authorities and rope people.
We didn't know jack shit about serial killers.
No, but again, what I'm saying is when you're looking at just on its face, you're talking if you read something about like a purse snatcher in the area, the cops are looking for him, and you find someone who you're pretty sure is the person that you've seen plastered on the newspaper. Are you going to say, oh well, you probably like held those women at knife point and took their money because you had kids to feed? I'm just going to let you go. Or is like, well, maybe the cops are looking for you and have been across multiple states for a reason.
I don't know if that's necessarily equal though, because a purse snatcher is still a purse snatcher. The woman running away with the child here, it is her own child. So I mean, for all you know, it could be an abuse thing. It could be anything that she's running.
Yeah, she could. You're right. She could be abusing that child.
No, she could be leaving because of an abusive home, and we're talking 1932.
But what I'm saying is,
so.
again, but she could be abusing that child.
She could. Shit, there could be.
I mean, ultimately, you just got to make a judgment call on it. You know, what do you know about the characters of those involved?
And she knows nothing, which, again, she could take a risk and say, well, I could call the police and, maybe I'm returning her to a bad situation. But again, I'm just looking at this and I'm not seeing that as a helpful character. I'm seeing someone who's aiding and abetting a criminal who she could be putting, someone's life in danger. She could be preventing a worried father and husband from getting their son back from a clearly unstable, villainous person.
But
I think we're jumping to this conclusion about like, oh, it's the 1930s. She was probably running from an abusive relationship because everybody in the past came from a broken home. They're all unhappy housewives.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying this character would have known her during the time that she was in that town and probably didn't see that, and maybe she jumped to that assumption. I mean, as far as the comparison to the 1930s, I'm like in the as far as serial killers go, in the 1930s we didn't know what the fuck a serial killer was.
I'm not talking about the serial killer thing. Okay, but my point is we don't know how long she's been in town with a relationship with this lady who helps her escape. It could have been 2 weeks, could have been a couple of months. We didn't even know if she knew that she had a kid.
Yeah,
right. She saw in the paper, oh, here, escape, because apparently you've got a child that I don't know, or that I do know, or there's not enough information for us to make any kind of a judgment call. I'm just saying when I'm watching the movie, I feel like there's almost like they're sticking together, they're helping each other because they're in showbiz or something, they're outcasts.
I think we're agreeing actually, because that's basically what I'm saying is I'm like you're not in that character's shoes. We don't know what she knows, so we can't really judge whether the character she came to her decision in her own way.
Yeah, whether it was good or
whether it's right or wrong,
and who knows?
She justifies it.
We're literally debating a 20-second scene, but that's what I love about this movie. What I like about this
in a 90-year-old movie,
30-second scene. We're debating on this, but that's what I like about this film. I think this film, the story is like, wow, there's a lot to kind of unpack and look at. Like we're discussing tonight, the different aspects, different sides, right, wrong, in between, where things fall and why, and motivations of folks. And that's what I think really made this film kind of compelling for me, because I wasn't sure where it was going to go. It's like, oh, wait, we're now on the run? I did not expect this from this film.
Yeah, I thought she was going to come back with the kid, and then he was going to be like, "Get out!"
Yeah.
But I feel like that's also something that could have happened. Is she could have tried to reason with him and be like, "Look, I made a mistake. I fucked up, and if you never want to see me again, that's fine. But please don't make it so I never see my child again." And then we have a completely different movie too. And
right. If she said that before she went on the run,
but I think she felt like, he's not gonna let it happen. I'm just gonna preemptively leave, which ultimately just makes the situation worse.
But Joe, it's interesting because I would watch that movie. The situation you just laid out leads to a completely different movie, but it's a movie that I would love to watch because I think there's a really interesting story and a bunch of possibilities there with these characters. So
I'm sure it's somewhere there in the pre-code era too. It's got to be somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And we've actually seen similar stories like this later on in cinema, where you have this odd dysfunctional husband-wife relationship where they're not divorced yet. The wife is with like the richer guy and the husband's kind of destitute, but they've got the connection of the kid and the whole nine. I mean, it's a similar theme that's been carried out since then too. I was watching this going, this has little seeds of other films I've seen later, more recent films. I'm like, this type of relationship thing showing, which is why, as you mentioned, Ian, I love going back. I have enjoyed this year so much going back to these older films I wouldn't have just watched on my own. And I'm glad I did, because we're looking at narratives and stories that you don't realize when you're watching them in more modern films. These stories have been around forever.
And also, what we're getting now are the watered down versions in a lot of cases of these ideas.
Yeah.
That's this movie is almost 100 years old, but it feels so fresh because I feel like in a lot of ways we haven't seen this kind of material dealt with in this way and in that as long. Yeah.
Well, the only thing we can do when we tell these stories is tell them from a more modern eye.
Right.
And actually, a couple days ago, Shanta asked me why I love movies so much and why I love these older movies so much, and I told her it's a window into a time I'm never going to see. Well, I don't know what thoughts were like in the 1930s. I don't know. Yeah, I know through these movies how people felt about things. That's one of the things I love about these. You get to see something you cannot go back to 1932 and see how something like this would play out. But those people in that time are able to show us visually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to be able to revisit that time and try to send yourself back there going, okay, how would how would you receive this? How would you interpret this film or that film, or M, or Blonde Venus, or all the other older films we've watched, not just from the pre-code stuff, but even in the 40s that we've looked at and such so far. This has been a fascinating journey, and I'm glad we got to watch this because, yeah, this film I had it and I'm watching it going, I'm digging this movie because it's challenging me as a viewer going, I am not sure how I feel about everything in this film. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. You're not getting your hand held here going, oh, this person or that yeah, we get the happy ending in that, but still there's a lot of things where you can debate and think about and just go, I'm not sure how I feel about Helen. Because it's not all laid out for you. And I am happy we watched this, and learning that Marlene Dietrich secretly is the one that actually penned this script initially just added a whole other wow, I wish I would have been able to see the original version of the script then before it was cut,
Probably doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately.
It probably does. No, but it'd be interesting to see what she wrote, what it in its first form, what it would have really been like, because that I think I'm like, man, I'd read that.
Kudos to von Sternberg for giving her the opportunity to do it. And I know they had a long relationship, so they worked on a lot of movies together. So
yeah, at least
probably trusted her.
Like 5 movies or 7 movies or something like that. They worked together.
And also, he's a fantastic director. If you've ever seen Underworld, he basically invented the gangster movie as we know it. I mean, gangster movies existed before that, but Underworld kind of became like the prototype for like what the Warner gangster movies were, and then so on. So,
yeah.
This makes me want to. There's probably been biographies written about Marlene Dietrich, but I wonder if she talks about this, this movie and writing it and what they did to it. Maybe that might have some insight. So I gotta look up, see if I can find a good bio on her.
Well, if you could find the September 3rd, 1932 film magazine Screenland online
I've got that,
somewhere.
I've got that on my shelf next to the fridge.
Yeah, so easy.
Apparently, they published the story, The Blonde Venus, saying it was done by Mortimer Franklin, and it was based upon the second version of the script and not the final product. And they figured that one might have had more similar to romances that appeared in the magazines to the female readers. But apparently Mortimer Franklin wrote the story Blonde Venus, which was based off the second version of the script. So that might be a little closer to what Marlene Dietrich came up with. Hard to say. But in any case, this is why I've enjoyed these older movies, because the stories behind them are so intriguing of how some of these came to light. It's been amazing. So, yeah, we've got one more month of we've got one more pre-code film next month. We've got a lot of great stuff still coming up, folks, and hope you enjoyed this discussion of Blonde Venus, and hope you seek it out, because there's still a lot of stuff we didn't cover. That lots of layers and things, and it'd be interesting to hear our listeners' opinion of Blonde Venus, if you can catch it somewhere. But now, as always, this is where I give my wonderful panel their license to shill. So, Ian, you're first tonight. What do you got, sir?
Well, I'm Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com, and also right here on YouTube. Do movie reviews and interviews and roundtables and stuff. And this Wednesday, I'm doing a roundtable review of Heretic, the latest from A24. And took last week off inadvertently. I did 3 podcasts, but none of them were from my own channel. So that was fun. And also I'm here every Monday night talking pre-code movies and movies related to pre-code movies with you fine folks. So thank you as always for the invitation, Mark.
You bet. Thanks for always coming back and not running away, going, what the fuck, man? And you as well, Joe. Thank you for always returning. And what do you got to shill, if anything?
Unfortunately, nothing right now. Unfortunately, the Literary License podcast has gone on hiatus for a few months. And we'll be back strong. They're going to work on the backlog of episodes that we've been recording for a few months that haven't been able to get released. The only thing I've got to shill that's coming up anytime soon is I worked on the Christmas special for the last drive-in that's coming up in about a month. But, I don't even know the date for that yet, so I don't really have anything to show. But I will say, Internet Archive does have that issue of Screenland.
Does it really?
PDF of it, so it is available if you want to read it. I found it via Google search, and full text of Screenland, from June to October of 1932. So it's got multiple issues.
Oh, nice!
There we go.
There you go.
I googled Blonde Venus and Mortimer Franklin, and it popped up.
Nice.
Wow.
The joys of the internet. See, the internet can
Isn't it
be
wonderful?
used for good. The internet can be
go
used
back and
for
read it.
good. Well, thank you both very much. Yes, folks, specialmarkproductions.com, and also here on the YouTube channel. If you didn't catch it, I did get a chance to interview Whit Whitman, which was a very interesting interview with the gentleman. He's a multi-talented filmmaker. He uses filmmaking as a teaching tool as well. He's got a couple of films that come out, Unnatural and Homeless, for the holidays, which my review will drop this week, and all that fun stuff is there. I got some written reviews up there, and then we got a whole bunch of stuff coming. I just whatever I can get done in my crazy time, I try, and I appreciate all my subscribers and listeners out there, our live viewers, which we had tonight, visiting our little sliver of the internet. I know it's noisy out there, so thank you for stopping by and tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe and check out Ian's stuff, and check out Joe Randazzo, Literary License Podcast. Great stuff there. And join us next week, as we will actually talk about a film that I'm sure some of you cinephiles out there have heard of, Touch of Evil. Yes, that's right. It's good to have a tracking shot that's almost as long as my closing here tonight. So with that, until next time, folks, we'll just say good night, everyone.